Call to order this regular scheduled meeting of the Navasota Planning and Zoning Commission. Please stand for the invocation of pledge of allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we ask that you stay with us this evening as we learn more about the discussion for tattoo studios. I want to thank you for the rain. Ask you maybe to send some of it to Los Angeles to help with the fires and the poor people that have been displaced and are losing everything that they have and own, and need you to send them some special rain out there as well. Maybe lower the velocity of the wind a little bit. And, please, if you would, keep those people safe and hold them in your hands and allow us to thank you for all the good things that you do and the grace that you give us. In your Son's name I pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any remarks of visitors?
No, sir, we didn't have any.
Unless we take somebody out here.
Yeah, we do have folks that probably want to speak on item number 4, but nothing, not on the agenda.
Moving forward, conduct a youth inquiry workshop discussion for tattoo studios and/or parlors to consider the nature of their proposed use and compatibility with the uses permitted in the various zoning districts, at applicable zoning district or districts within which such use should be permitted.
Planning and Zoning Commission, just to give a little bit of background, over the last several months, staff has been approached by various parties interested in opening tattoo studios within the city limits. Historically, there's at least in the last 10 to 12 years, there was one tattoo studio that opened in the city. Tattoo studios are not listed in any zoning district as either permitted or conditional use. And so when that happens, someone interested in opening a tattoo studio has to apply for a specific use permit. And that's basically, if you're not listed in any zoning, this is a special application to do so. It requires planning and zoning and city council approval, very similar to conditional use permits. So with that, with the multiple interests that we've received, we wanted to forward this to Planning and Zoning Commission as a youth inquiry workshop as outlined in the zoning ordinance to discuss if there was any interest, further discussion, or direction of what possible zoning districts tattoo studios should be added as permitted or conditional uses, or if the desire is to keep it the same through the SUP process. Staff did a little bit of research to surrounding communities. There are some cities that have some regulations, some that don't have any really applicable, and then some in the middle. For the city of Bryan, they allow tattoo studios in their commercial retail district, C2, C3, and the industrial district, as well as a southern portion of their downtown. In your staff report, you have a copy of their use definition, and then they also added some special restrictions about how close one studio can be to another, and a few other square footage limitations. And of course, they did include in here about alcohol beverage and state licensing, but in general, no one should operate a tattoo studio unless they have those licenses by the state. College Station, a little bit similar. However, they didn't have any restrictions on proximity to other tattoo studios, and those are allowed in some of their mixed zoning districts and the Northgate district. Tomball probably had the most open standards or requirements for tattoo studios. They basically consider those in the same category as jewelry, like personal, what we define it as personal service shops, so hair salon, things of that nature, anything with appearance. And then Branham, it's not in your staff report, but I did hear back after we finalized the agenda, and they also don't have anything specific. They also fall into the category of personal service shops, which is in that same category as anything hair-related, nails, and things of that nature. And so again, the discussion tonight is there an interest on adding tattoo studios to any of the current zoning districts, either as permitted use, where they're allowed by right to do so and only go through a permitting process, or adding as a conditional use, going through council, P&Z and council, or keeping it the same specific use permit. And as I mentioned, I think there is someone in the audience that would like to speak on this. Y'all can ask them to speak before or after the discussion, but I'll open it up to questions.
Can you, so permitted would mean it would be actually line item listed as a permitted use, right?
Correct.
And then conditional use and specific use, one of them, if it sells, it has to reapply and the other one it doesn't, is that right?
Yes, so conditional uses, those apply to the property.
To the property,
Not to the owner.
and not to the owner.
Specific use only applies to the current owner or the applicant. And then once that property sells, the use goes away.
So,
And those are SUPs, the specific use.
so if a licensed owner sells it to another individual, they would have to reapply for a specific use.
Yes, if
But
that's
the conditional use is the property, so if it's sold, it can still be maintained as the same business.
that's correct.
And then depending on the outcome of today, there would be a public hearing and then an action, or what's the process?
Yes, so today is just a workshop discussion. It's really just to get feedback and maybe some direction, general direction. If there is a desire to change the rules, we would come back with a public hearing and a formal recommendation to council and a council public hearing and ordinance adoption. So there's a few steps ahead.
And where do we have personal service shops permitted already?
Those are actually fairly, there's a lot of zoning districts. For sure in the downtown district, B1 zoning district. There's even a lot of them as conditional uses in residential districts. So I think that's really going to depend on the direction, but for sure, if we implemented something similar to like the city of Graham or Tomball, those would be fairly in almost all of the zoning districts as either a permitted or conditional use.
Are there any comments?
Can I go and speak?
Sure. Just make sure you state your name and address.
So my name is Tiffany Vivaldi, and I live at 11038 County Road 351 in Nyersville. So I have lived in Grimes County for 13 years. I've been a small business owner since 2016. I've served the community in many ways, whether it be donating my time, my efforts, or my business. I helped raise $1,200 in scholarships for the high school, and I look forward to applying my art and my skill to the community, but also to the high school programs, the art council. There's many things that I would like to bring within the community. I have been studying tattooing for several years now. I not only do tattoos, but I help people through maybe traumas that they've experienced, overcoming issues that maybe they've had in their life. I do a lot of biblical-based pieces. The majority of my clients that come through are anywhere from age 20 to 45, and typically women. So I don't really have, I would say my clientele comes from all around. So I have clients from Montgomery, the Woodlands, Houston, Bryan College Station. I have Navasota clients as well, and they're all returning clients. And something that I found, I originally was trying to open up shop in Navasota, and I soon found that I was not able to. So I'm in Montgomery right now in the historic downtown district. And it served me well, but this is my home, and this is where I'd like to have my business. And I noticed that a lot of my clients would come in and they would spend money at the winery next to where I'm working out at, or they would go across the street and shop at the boutique. So the ultimate goal for me is to not only bring my clients in for myself, but for the community as well. I'm really big on community. I'm really big on making sure that I have a good purpose in my town, and it's not just I'm coming in and I'm wanting to open up your typical tattoo shop. I know it's very taboo. I know there's a stigma around it, but what I do is completely different. You know, I help women that have had breast cancer and they've had double mastectomies and they've like an areola replacement. You know, I go much further into it than just doing tattoos. I've been an artist since I was a young child. So the ultimate goal isn't just to bring a place that's going to have people hanging out on the street or we're open till 2 a.m. My goal is to have a nice, classy establishment that is going to bring in people from outside of Navasota into Navasota. So, that's my spiel.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Do we currently have, open and closing restrictions on any business in certain districts?
No, sir.
What we did when we approved the previous tattoo.
Yes, so we don't have any, so I call it a cookie cutter rule that applies to all. But yes, in the previous tattoo studio that was approved, there was a number of restrictions.
That was approved through a conditional use
Specific.
for specific use. So you can apply any regulation you want through the specific use to give it a specific use.
That's correct. Yes, it was done in a P1 zone, south of Salt, I think in the same strip center where Mr. Harris's higher places.
Oh, yeah,
That
right.
same-
I remember,
same
yeah.
strip center.
What were those restrictions?
Close at 10 p.m. was one of them. You know, because I remember sitting up here at planning and zoning and there were several people that were, you know, we had a long discussion about it. And several people were, you know, adamant against it. And you know, I mean, it's pretty mainstream. And, you know, the young man that put it in, you know, lived by those restrictions and did a really good job. And then he unfortunately passed away in COVID. He was with COVID, he was a young man. He was like 35 years old or something. And you know, James, we talked about it several times, James Harris and I, said he was a great neighbor, you know, in the strip center and stuff with him. And
I get a lot of his clients as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I
And,
do.
I mean, it was a big loss when Zeus, you know, he was a great guy. But, and he really, you know, he did the restrictions. He followed through, and I don't know anything about, you know, how big his business was or anything, I don't have any idea. But I do remember that we added some restrictions. I don't remember the name of the business. Exactly the
I
name.
just vision the sign on the wall. That's
Yeah,
about all I can do.
yeah, I can, yeah, I can see the sign. Be a good place to, you know, to put it. I don't know. You can do where one, you know.
Years ago.
Almost.
Okay.
Let's see, there's fire lane requirements for since this was in a strip center, some of these things are stipulated. Property owner shall maintain property, fire, life insurance, post a notice of the limits of the insurance of tattoo parlor. Tattoo parlor shall maintain business liability. Signs for the tattoo parlor shall be limited to the front face of the leased space in accordance with the sign ordinance. No additional signage on the property shall be permitted except on the leased space. No flashing or electronic signage to the sides and rear of the property or towards residential areas. All tattoo services shall be restricted to the interior of the existing building and not visible from storefront windows. No outdoor storage or service displays. The siding or bars of the building are not to be used by customers or tattoo operators for standing or waiting for services. The door of the building shall be kept closed except for the delivery of materials and entrance of customers. It's quite a bit.
Yeah, I know.
So
We did. We did.
So is some of this standard? I mean, like the business liability and stuff like that, everybody's gotta have that, or that was, or you were pushing, so people were pushing that on the business owner?
I think some of these things are standard, and maybe Tiffany can answer this, but I believe one of the state regulations is you have to have it screened. You can't tattoo in view of the public, right? It has to be behind. That's why if you notice most tattoo places have tinted windows, or it's very private. Yeah, you only know that it's a tattoo studio because of the sign. So I think some of these things, unless state law has caught up since then, and some of these things are standard, but generally that's what you see with tattoo studios. Hours of operation, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.
This was special use?
Yes, a specific use permit, yes.
In 2015.
It is also limited to 5 years and renewable upon review and compliance with city and state regulations.
Are we discussing whether we can have tattoo parlors, period? Tattoo establishments, I don't know what the right terminology is.
Yeah.
Or are we, did this become an issue because of the location request?
Well, it became a discussion just based on a request in general, right?
Okay.
Because right now, taking the people that have come before the city up until this point, if anyone walks into City Hall and says, hey, I would like to open a tattoo studio, where can I open one? The answer from staff in accordance with the regulations is you can apply for it everywhere except the overlay district. That's the only district that actually prohibits anything else that's in the overlay. But anywhere else outside of the overlay, you have to apply for this specific use permit that requires, of course, planning and zoning recommendations and council final approval. Versus if somebody walks into City Hall and says, I would like to open a boutique, for example, clothing boutique store, that's already permitted in B1 zoning. So generally, at that point, it's only handled administratively through our building officials, just to make sure that the building is up to code for that use.
And we already have the personal service shops, like salons and stuff like that, are already permitted in B1.
Correct. And so versus it being a administrative process where it's already allowed, currently, there's a lot of public involvement and process to go with it, right? And so the question is, do we want to keep that process the same, where they go through those steps anywhere that they want to do it outside of the overlay? Or do we want to change it to say, if somebody does walk into City Hall and wants to open a tattoo studio, do we say, okay, in the CBD district, they're allowed? So if you want to go in CBD, then you just go to administrative process. But if you want to go outside the CBD, then maybe the rest of them are conditional use zoning, right? So that's a discussion, is what direction do you think it would be appropriate? And no action tonight, this is just a discussion. If there's any general direction, we will come back into the formal public hearing process to amend the zoning ordinance if that's what's desired.
Mrs. Alden, your business is now in a business district?
Yes, sir. So I'm inside Little House of Browse in the historic area of Montgomery. I've been operating out of there for 3 months now, and I homeschool my children, so I typically work in the evenings. And we also do lashes, eyebrows. It's like a whole kind of beauty aspect, and my goal would be to open something like that here. I just have to get the steps, and
Sure.
think because of location, I would be rather inclined to do a specific use in the downtown district or central business district, and possibly some sort of conditional use in B1. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Only because,
You got your colors up there.
yeah, only because, you know, in central business district, we might have to implement stricter guidelines than a freestanding building in B1.
So,
But I'm sorry, you lost me there. What's the rationale with a freestanding?
Well, so reading over the guidelines, right, so let's say that in central business district, somebody wants to open a shop, but let's say their suite of services include something that could be, that could let off smells or something to the neighboring suites, right? So we want to make sure that whatever goes in there isn't going to bother other businesses around them because they are in suites, you know, depending on which part of town, or residents above you, so. But I don't think that if you're in B1 on an empty lot and you want to build a building to host your tattoo studio or whatever, I don't think you should have to comply with that. So what I'm saying is I don't think there's a blanket rule to be able to make it just all conditional use, but I also don't think we should have to convene every time somebody wants to put a tattoo studio. So like, if we can't figure out a blanket way to do it, if I had to pick, it would be more of a specific use if it's in CBD, and some sort of list of conditional use for B1. This is what I'm thinking.
So administrative through B1 and a little bit more oversight in downtown.
Right.
So do the salon studios apply to this same
I
criteria
think
that
there's
you're
a
talking
conditional use, right?
So
Like a hair salon.
no, like a hair
Nail
salon, nail salon in downtown is permitted by right. So they just go through administrative process.
In B1 and downtown, and then
Yes.
conditional residential.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, what's the difference? I mean, what's the difference between tattoo and big nails?
Well, I was thinking more about the smells of the permanent.
Well,
I mean, no, because you brought up smell, and that's something that came to my mind.
Yeah, but to the point that if a hair studio is allowed, they let off all.
And I will say that there is already use restrictions in CBD on downtown ordinance that prohibits any use that's gonna create noxious odors or fumes to adjacent properties.
Yeah.
So that's already in the rules.
The man's noxious is another man's dollar sign, I guess.
Well, to each his own, right?
I will say, I'm intending on starting out.
Could you speak to the mic if you don't mind?
For sure.
Just get your chair. I know, you're the one here, so.
Hi, I will say, my location I desire right now is inside a sketch shop in Lily and June, so it would be a small studio. And I wouldn't be seen by the public. You walk down a hallway and you walk into my studio. So it's not anything, I wouldn't have a big tattoo sign or anything like that. It's by appointment only. I don't allow walk-ins or anything like that. It's very upscale from your average. Now, obviously, my goal in 3 to 5 years would be to have some sort of storefront, but it's not like there's the tattoo flashing sign. Like, you're coming in, you can get, you know, different services that are within the beauty realm that kind of go hand in hand with that. But I'm not, you know, again, my clientele are typically women. I do a lot of religious stuff. I don't do any weird things. I don't do sacrilegious stuff, demonic stuff. Like,
Well, this is when it comes to,
yeah,
for us, like, if you keep things in conditional use and special use, we can kind of do more one-offs than when we do a permitted use, right? If we just say blanket, sure, let's permit this in regular B1, and then anybody, no matter what kind of shop they want to put in and say,
Right.
well, I'm a shop, that's all that matters, versus being able to say, well, yeah, we like what you're doing and that sort of stuff.
I definitely understand, not wanting just to have anyone come in. I get that. I think that, I do understand that, because I understand what can come on the other side of tattoo stuff. But I will say, a lot of the studios in like the downtown Bryan area, I received a tattoo from Arsenal Tattoo. And Arsenal Cliff Collard is very well known in the art community, and he does a lot of fundraising. He does a lot of different things for downtown Bryan too. So I think it's really on what artists you're getting in and what intentions they have and what their long-term goals are.
Where do you lump your business in with other kinds of businesses? Do you see do you see yourself more as a art studio versus a salon versus a retail? Like where in that spectrum of
I would
the
say
markets do you see yourself?
probably art and cosmetic. It's really what it feels like to me. I don't feel like I've got tattoos at tattoo parlors. My studio doesn't feel like, and that's the number one thing I get from my clients. It's like, I don't feel like I'm in a tattoo studio. So I would definitely say art, because I draw the majority of all my pieces. And then cosmetic, because to me, it's like I work a lot in the cosmetic realm of things, whether it's maybe covering up a scar or, giving the double mastectomy patient something to kind of look forward to. So I don't view myself as like a tattoo parlor. That's me, it's my business.
What was the location? I kind of missed that.
That's
What you
fine.
talking about?
It's across from the post office. It's Lily and Jim.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
The newest.
Yes, ma'am. So
Yeah.
we are
I looked in the window.
a multitude of women that do all of the amazing, fun, unique things. We're all artists in our own form, and kind of just banded together, and we really want to do a lot for the community. It's not, I don't want to just come in here and make money. Like, I want to give back. I'm huge on that.
So can you talk a little bit about that business itself, what all is in there? Just to see-
Yes, ma'am.
give us an idea of
For sure.
what
So
it is.
Steph owns Lily and Gio, and she's right there. So, yes, so she is a event planner in Forest, and it's also a retail space too. So Trisha Lookadoo, Huckleberry Notions, she does thrifted goods and thrifted finds, and then she also does embroidery and kind of like a barrage of different screen prints and stuff like that. And then together they have what's called the Western Collective, where you can walk in and you can build a hat and design it like the brim hats. And then I also have a hat form, like the trucker hats that are in there as well, just kind of set up. We host workshops all the time. We're always trying to bring people in. So yeah, and then on the back side of that, in a little tiny space, would be where my business would be for now. And I'm kind of, up to the back, and then I would have my little studio back there.
So I guess my question then becomes, if it's inside of something else, then does it require a permit at all or anything like that, or?
Yes, because the zoning ordinance is very comprehensive with land use, so it is what are you doing on this piece of property?
The documents inside the property, all five of them have to be approved.
Yes,
be approved.
that's correct.
Should be sneaky.
Yes, yes.
Why'd you look at me?
I was looking at Dia.
Just that.
It's in my way.
Yeah.
But I would like, with the art side of things, my long-term goal, because I have 3 girls and I'm huge in art, and I see like how Brenham is and how they have like a lot of the murals and stuff like that. It brings a lot of people in. I want to do something like that. I know artists that are mural artists. I know local artists. I want to bring more of an art focus, because I see a lot of amazing artists like that are in Circle P and stuff like that. And I just think that maybe we could get, we do our blues fest and like all of the different things like birthday bash, but I think there's a lot of children that would benefit from the artistic side of things, that are just a little bit different from the average person that kind of, works a 9-to-5 job. There are artists out there that's their life. And I'd like to, bring sense of that for high school students and stuff like that. So maybe if there is a high school student that wants to go be a tattoo artist, they're not thrown into a really hostile situation, because the tattoo industry within a lot of other parlors, you can go in and you're not paid, you're not taught correctly, you're taught the way that the artists want you to be taught, you're not brought to your full potential, they get hazed. It's not a good situation. So if I could keep that from happening in my community, that's another thing that I would like to do too.
Just a comment on the other cities and stuff like that. I don't see any real reason to make distancing and locations and square footage rules and regulations. I mean, by definition, in Bryan, you have to have at least 2 parlors, because it says shall be located within 1 mile of another.
Well, it's a buffer requirement, right? So what they're saying is they don't want 2 competing tattoo parlors right next door. They want them a mile apart. And then the minimum square footage, that is a fairly restrictive regulation, because like Tiffany mentioned, she wants to be in a smaller studio.
Yeah.
Well, this is forcing any tattoo artist to be at least 3,000. That's the size of the old pawn shop here in downtown. It's huge.
Yeah.
And most of our houses are not 3,000
Yeah.
square feet.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't, for me, it's all about placement and,
I mean, I think, 2015 was 10 years ago. I don't have any tattoos, but I know society in general, they're not really a taboo as much as they used to be. So I think the question maybe can be, if we're going to allow them administratively, you can add use restrictions in that zoning district, specifically for tattoos. And so if there's something in particular, maybe signage, maybe you don't want tattoo studios to have the full 150 square foot signage that allows in a wall mounted sign, for example, limit them to a smaller size. Saying they're allowed administratively with these special regulations might be a smoother process for future business ventures. Or the conditional use, that's a little bit more involved, obviously.
One comment someone made to me was, the thought of maybe just allowing them, conditionally if other esthetician services were offered besides just tattoo. So I know she does a host of other suites of services. It was, and I number one to me.
I'm not sure what that brings to the table. If you're either trying to dilute out the tattoo parlor stigma by saying, oh, well, they're just not a tattoo parlor, but if you're a tattoo artist and you don't do eyelashes and eyebrow beads and stuff like that, because there's plenty of guys that just do ink, right?
Yes.
And you're saying, well, you can't have just an ink parlor. You've got to have,
Right,
you've got to be doing something else. And so that seems a little restricted. But you mentioned somebody talking to you, did somebody submit a written for last week or for the last meeting when this got tabled that we didn't read?
Actually, yes, that is
the back of this, right, or is that a different?
Yes, I believe so. It is an email.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't make it to the last page.
Yes. Yeah, we did receive some feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I see no difference between.
The
I have a petition, I have a lot of business to sign. I need that.
I don't think we're again, I'm.
No.
I'm not.
I just want to make sure that it doesn't create.
Some of it's about the processing, right? The last thing we need is, like, we're always saying, why, people keep coming to us all over and over and over, and, you know, it's the same thing, right? And why? And can we negate the effort, you know, just make it administrative? But at the same time, it's about placement. I mean, there's so many zoning things, you know, and people get pretty wound up about where things are, so.
And really, the only downfall between specific use and conditional is they just have to come to us every time.
Yeah, we're both of those, yeah, both of those requires P and Z and council. With specific, if they sell the business to someone else, then it's no longer, it's null and void. And if it's conditional, it continues.
So so if you go that route, if they sell it, they can't maintain the business as it is at that property site. But in general, when people are gonna do that, they get an understanding of whether or not it's gonna be maintained so they would purchase the business. Like, okay, so I've got a parlor, or I've got a tattoo studio, you know, I've built it, I wanna retire, I wanna sell it to somebody, it's in a special use. So I have a buyer, but in order for that buyer to actually buy it and maintain it on that site, he has to have some sort of guarantee that the zoning is gonna be maintained.
Yeah,
So-
that's not possible.
It's not possible.
He has to purchase it first. Because
Before he can request the continuation of the zoning. And that's a gamble on their part, that buying it is gonna be maintained. So there's a real thing about special use and what happens to the property or the business later, you know. And that might slow some people down, saying, well, I would put this business in this location, in this town, because I know that I can make money and grow a business, but if I can't sell that business when I retire, why would I do it? Why would I make that initial investment?
Like an apprentice wants to buy out the.
Yeah. So that's a real problem with a special use, specific use. I don't know how many businesses we have in town that are done that way.
Very few.
Very few.
Yeah, very few.
I think what Ethan said though about having both specific and conditional, depending on where and what location we're talking about, what zone we're talking about. I think that-
Well, specific uses, they already exist everywhere. That's already an application.
All you gotta do is apply.
Any property.
Any property.
And that is the one that ends if it sells.
Yeah.
The conditional use, that's where they won't exist, conditional or.
Now, what is it, so let's just talk about like, her scenario. She doesn't own the property.
Right.
It's leased, so it expires at the end of the lease, and who's the leaseholder, and how do you now manage a specific use if there's no ownership of the property?
So in that situation, the owner of the property would actually apply for that specific use permit, that special use permit. And,
Not the leasee, the
not the
owner.
leasee or the subleasee or the sub-subleasee, no, it would be the property owner that applies for the specific use.
And is it for that specific suite, or the whole?
Just on the property, on the site, on the
You could
property site.
you could probably own in on just a suite or just an area. Generally, that would apply to the property.
So that,
And so in this situation, if she's not the property owner and someone else is, and they sign off on the paperwork, she decides, hey, you know what, it's not working, another tattoo artist could come in and continue that use, because the property owner hasn't changed.
But in those kind of scenarios, I wouldn't want to try and say, well, the permit uses for 350 square feet, and then things get really busy,
Right.
and she brings in a partner, and she needs 500 square feet, and the property owner says, well, yeah, sure, we can give you this extra space. And now they can't, because the permit says that they're only given this much square footage, right?
so then that property would always under specific use be available for a tattoo.
Yes,
The
until
property.
it changes hands and it's sold, and then.
Well, that's like a beauty shop, somebody leaves and they fill another chair.
Right.
So, yeah. They don't have to come back and ask us.
No, because those are permitted.
Yeah.
I don't I don't like to pigeonhole a bunch of businesses being different from each other in some regards, you know? The nail salons, to me, they're all the same. They're just private enterprises where people are providing service to people. You know, the service for you is nails, and the service for you is hair, and the service for you is tattoo. I don't see a difference in these personal service shops by it's a service. Just because it's a different service doesn't change.
Massage, healing.
Yeah.
You know, people that do that here too.
Were they permitted?
Yes.
They're written in as permitted, yes.
I kind of like when I saw the words personal service shop, I thought we should change some of our wording to say that.
That is our wording.
It is our,
Yes.
okay, I like that. I thought that was great wording.
Et cetera. So,
Yeah, et cetera. There's a definition to this. It clarifies, and historically, at least our city, we have not interpreted that as
as an et
a
cetera.
studio,
Yeah.
so that is why in 2015 they went through a specific use.
Yeah.
I think the question here would be, do you just amend the definition of personal service shops to include tattoo studios, or you create your own use? I think just from staff's perspective, we would recommend just creating a new outline tattoos, that way you know exactly what zoning districts you want, if they're gonna be permitted uses.
And then could we have a specific one for CBD versus?
And now we know.
Yes, yeah, you can pick that in downtown, they're conditional, and then in B1, they're permitted
I
outright.
just don't know, I'm still stuck on the thought pattern. What is the difference between a tattoo shop and a hair salon? Like, besides everyone's conception.
Right.
Every 6 months, you gotta go back to the hair salon.
Tattoos are longer lasting.
I'll say my people come pretty often.
But I mean, to me, that's like, doesn't even matter, because why should we place more rules on a tattoo shop than a hair salon?
Yeah, I agree.
You have to be extremely hygienic too. Like, I've had to go through all kinds of different certifications. Just
Are
like-
you subject to inspection from anybody?
Yes,
from
the
the
state,
state or
the
anything?
state, yes, ma'am.
I guess, but I'm all for just making a new condition with whatever, what we have to decide those requirements.
They should all be under the same.
I think so too.
So are they administrative, or are they planning and zoning and council approval? Because if we treat them the same, then they're generally gonna be just an administrative.
Administrative, which would be just like Brian or Pulp Station.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
So so when we use the word personal service shop, in what zones do they appear in the code?
Yeah, so they are permitted outright administratively in B1, Central Business District, and I believe most of them are conditional uses in the residential districts too, yes. Oh, but as home occupation, so there is a little bit of difference in residential zones.
Okay, so we got B1 and Central Business District, they're just permitted,
Yes.
so that's administrative.
Administrative. I think in the multifamily.
And no specific, I mean, what are the specific requirements?
There is none for those, other than the blanket requirements, like you can't produce toxic odors and noise beyond your, property boundaries, but those apply to all uses, even a restaurant or something else. I did have a use table. In B2. B2, they're conditional.
B2,
And that's because B1 is geared more towards your smaller square footage of buildings. And B2 is like where you want your Target, HEB, and Kroger to live. So in those zones, it's meant for larger, 50,000 or more square feet.
right, so they're conditional in case you have a really small spot in a big strip.
Correct.
It could be conditional, we could say, yeah, you just got a little 2,500 square foot space in this big strip, and if you want to do this, we can pass the conditional.
Correct.
Okay, so B1, CBD, B2.
So in R3, they're conditional. High density multifamily zone, they're conditional.
If I could interject.
Certainly.
The big problem and the concern when we passed that other one, if I remember correctly, was to prevent the stereotypical tattoo parlor of my generation from being allowed to come in. So no incidents of the wild bunch sitting out there wrecking the neighborhood while their buddy was in there drunk.
Sounds like anarchy or something.
Right. And not concerned with this other, but rather the devices that we have to control that are the conditional use and the specific use permits.
And all those regulations that we wrote back there in 2015.
Yeah, I don't remember how we got into all of those.
Oh, yeah. It was
Yeah, that was my.
intense.
Location probably got more to do with it than anything.
Yeah,
Well, especially because that one was next to a residential area.
Yeah.
So it's backing up to a neighborhood, even though it's in a commercial corridor, it's backed up to a neighborhood. There's even things about people shouldn't hang out behind the building. That's directly in view of the homes. But
well, interestingly enough, what I remember about it was there was not a lot of input from the neighbors.
oh, really?
No, there was not. I mean, it was mostly from the central business district. You know, the people right down here on Washington Avenue.
That running it off of Washington.
They were the ones that were doing the talking. And, yeah, I specifically remember, there wasn't really, you know.
Well, when was the last time you saw 5 motorcycles on parked in front of the tattoo shop?
Just more
It's been a long time now.
Those are home studios.
Yeah.
Garage.
There's more motorcycles in front of Classic Rock.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Passing regulations for coffee shops.
So are we thinking just a blanket conditional use? Well, I'm in administrative.
No, it's a permitted use.
Permitted.
Permitted use, and maybe carving out its own use definition. I think that would be.
Because then you can put some small restrictions in the use definition. If it's permitted use with restriction, and they're codified.
Yes, and then you can specifically do that for tattoo studios, if that's what you want to do.
But that way you could, well, I guess,
Well, they're codified and it's done administratively, but they still have to conform to any special regulations that,
Within the permission.
yeah, within the use.
So reflecting back, you know, on the uproar, you know. So what are we saying happens in the overlay and central business district? Is it okay or not okay?
What we're saying right now, it sounds like, is that, planning and zoning would entertain an amendment that would allow them administratively in the central business district, and B1, with some special potential regulations of maybe signage or other things that,
the only stipulation I would do is like a time, make sure that
the operating hours.
yeah, that they're not open till crazy late hours, but, I mean, this town, nobody's open crazy late until then.
Usually leave by 11.
Yeah,
I guess I'm just thinking of, you know,
And then overlay,
concerns.
overlay not
Down-
allowed,
Yeah, not allowed.
not allowed.
Yeah, I'm just.
No, if we can't have
like
chocolate,
back
though,
on
we can't have.
Discussion one. And a lot of, the businesses are still owned, maintained, run by a lot of the same people. So,
I think downtown's
Maybe we
changed,
should add.
downtown's changed a lot in 10 years.
oh, yeah, it is, yeah.
I think back then there was probably more, you can probably find a little bit more antique stores and things that now it's changed.
But, maybe we should ask people what they want to. I don't know. I'm just thinking kind of out loud to, because if we ask some of the current occupants, business owners or stores or anything like that, then what we do, we get buy-in for. If we get some of their opinions too.
And if there are amendments that are presented in the future, those have to go through a public hearing process, which will notify,
Oh,
the paper,
Yeah.
the agenda. I'm not sure if I think the regulations change where if it's a blanket amendment that affects the entire ordinance, I don't believe mailings are required, but we will put in the, agenda, the website, in the paper saying, hey, we're amending the zoning ordinance to now allow tattoo studios, right? So it is going to be a public process and it'll be a public hearing to amend the rules. So it'll come to council, the planning and zoning, and y'all will vote on the recommendation, and council will hold a public hearing and pass or reject the ordinance. So that process will be very public and invite feedback from the
Yeah, I
community.
just think we should give. Because, I don't know, then we're all partners in, in what we do, and it's sort of like a joint decision-making, and, like I say, you get buy-in, and then it's, not antagonistic going, well, we didn't want them, and, we're not gonna let them succeed, which is not fair either.
Ethan, you still would rather have some conditional use rather than.
No, I'm just curious why the city of Bryan says conditional use in downtown center district doesn't permit it.
They're just trying to, they,
But like what kind of-
controlling the businesses they have, but one probably is they want more throughput, right? Like, you're working by yourself and she has 4 appointments, she's doing 2 appointments in an evening, so from a business standpoint, the city's like, well, they're not bringing, 250 people through the store that are then wandering to the other stores in town, and they're taking up all this square footage. They're not doing the rest of downtown a favor. So that's what I see Brian do.
Theirs may be 15 years old as well.
Yeah, that's my only,
Yeah, when was the last time they changed that ordinance?
Yeah.
do we want it to be conditional and see? And if so, why?
I guess I kind of want it to be specific.
Well, specifics,
To them.
you don't allocate specific uses in any zoning district. Specific is a special application that applies to anywhere in the city except overlay.
Oh, okay.
So that's fine. Everyone has that ability to request that. It's a conditional or permitted, that's the question.
And if permitted in which zones?
I can put together a proposed amendment and bring it back, and we'll obviously get more feedback as we go through that process. So that can be a starting point. Might not pass on the first, on the first go through, but maybe we'll learn some feedback if any.
Whoever reads the paper comes to me.
Yeah, because for me, I'm fine with permitted in P1, but I just don't know about if it needs to be conditional use in C.
What do you think, Bernie?
I think you're on the right track.
Any other discussion?
Didn't answer your total question.
On track though.
Yeah, I think having you here has been very valuable.
Mark, moving on, number 5, consideration and possible action on the meeting minutes for December 11th, 2024 meeting.
That's a long meeting, wasn't it?
Adjourned at 9:02.
That's exactly.
It would have been, 9:55 if we would have stayed that night. An hour.
Randy would have had a. Randy.
I will make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
Have a motion from Commissioner Wilson,
I'll second.
second. Commissioner Wiseman. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I don't have a gavel. Let's wait.
Yeah.